Senior military advisor. Catherall pressed his secondary appendage against the data console and watched the holographic display flicker to life. The recording showed a battle that had taken place 3 standard cycles ago on the colony world of Verith Prime. He had watched it 17 times already. Each viewing left him more confused than the last. The Galactic Council had assigned him a simple task: document the military tactics of the newest species to join the interstellar community. The humans had been spacefaring for only 200 of their years. They were young. They were inexperienced. They should have been easy to understand. Catherall clicked his mandibles together in frustration. Nothing about these creatures was easy to understand. The recording showed a human battalion facing a Krethian raiding force. The Krethians outnumbered the humans 3-1. They held the high ground. They controlled the only water source on that section of the planet. Every tactical manual written by every species in the known galaxy said the same thing. The humans should have retreated. They should have established defensive positions. They should have waited for reinforcements. The humans did none of these things. Commander Sarah Chun led the charge personally. She ran directly toward the enemy positions with her weapon firing. Her soldiers followed without hesitation. They screamed as they advanced. The sound was terrifying even through the recording equipment. The Krethians had never encountered anything like it. They broke formation within the first 30 seconds. Catherall paused the recording and made another note in his document. He had been compiling these observations for 6 standard months now. The file had grown to over 3,000 pages. Every page contained examples of human behavior that defied logical explanation. The door to his office slid open. Junior Advisor Methkai entered and bowed respectfully. She was young and eager. She had been assigned to assist with this project because she had expressed interest in human studies. Catherall wondered if she regretted that decision now. She asked if he had reviewed the latest battle recordings from the Terran Defense Academy. He told her that he had watched them 4 times. She asked what conclusions he had reached. He admitted that he had reached none. Methkai approached the console and studied the frozen image of Commander Chun. The human female's face was twisted into an expression that Methkai could not identify. She asked what the expression meant. Catherall explained that the humans called it a battle smile. He said that some humans experienced a form of pleasure during combat situations. Methkai's antenna went flat against her skull. She asked if he was joking. He assured her that he was completely serious. He pulled up another file from his research database. This one contained interview transcripts from human military officers. He had spoken with over 200 of them during his research. Not a single one had expressed a preference for defensive tactics. They all talked about something they called initiative. They believed that the side which attacked first held a fundamental advantage. They believed that aggression created its own momentum. One general had told Catherall that the best defense was a good offense. Catherall had asked him to explain this statement. The general had laughed and said that you could not lose a battle if the enemy was too busy running away to fight back. Catherall had not found the statement humorous. Methkai asked about the historical records. Catherall told her that he had studied over 10,000 years of human military history. The pattern remained consistent across all time periods and all cultures. Humans fought aggressively. They attacked fortified positions. They launched counteroffensives when they were outnumbered. They preferred to die advancing rather than live retreating. He showed her a recording from something called the Battle of Thermopylae. 300 human warriors had faced an army of over 100,000 enemies. Any rational species would have surrendered. Any rational species would have negotiated. The humans chose to fight until every single one of them was dead. They killed thousands of enemies before they fell. Methkai watched the historical simulation in silence. When it ended, she asked if the humans had known they would die. Catherall confirmed that they had known from the beginning. She asked why they had stayed. He admitted that he still did not fully understand. The human concept of glory confused him. They spoke of dying well as if death could be measured in quality. They built monuments to soldiers who had achieved nothing except dying in particularly aggressive ways. They celebrated leaders who had led attacks that any reasonable tactician would call suicidal. Kethral opened his main document and scrolled to the section on human psychological warfare. This was perhaps the most disturbing part of his research. Humans did not simply try to defeat their enemies. They tried to terrify them. They decorated their armor with symbols designed to frighten. They shouted challenges before battle. Some ancient human cultures had collected trophies from fallen enemies. The Varkith hegemony had learned this lesson during their attempted conquest of Earth's outer colonies. They had sent 40 warships against a human defense force of 12 vessels. The humans had immediately launched boarding parties against the Varkith flagship. They had captured the bridge within 30 minutes. The remaining Varkith ships had surrendered without firing another shot. Kethral had interviewed the surviving Varkith commander. The old warrior's exoskeleton had trembled as he described the experience. He said the humans had come through the airlocks laughing. He said they had moved with a speed that seemed impossible. He said they had shown no fear even when outnumbered. He had fought for 200 years and had never experienced anything like it. The document continued with analysis of human training methods. Human military academies emphasized offensive thinking from the earliest stages of instruction. Young officers were taught to look for opportunities to attack. They were punished for excessive caution. The phrase acceptable losses appeared frequently in their tactical manuals. Methkai asked about the human concept of acceptable losses. Kethral explained that humans were willing to sacrifice a portion of their forces to achieve victory. Other species fought until the cost became too high and then withdrew. Humans calculated how many soldiers they were willing to lose and then accepted those casualties without hesitation. She asked if this made humans cruel. Kethral considered the question carefully before answering. He said that he did not believe humans were cruel. He believed they were simply different. They had evolved on a death world where passive creatures did not survive. Their entire biological history had selected for aggression. He showed her data on human physiology. Their bodies produced chemicals during combat that increased strength and reduced pain sensitivity. Their cardiovascular systems could sustain intense physical activity for extended periods. Their skeletal structures were dense enough to absorb significant impact damage. They were built for fighting in ways that most species were not. The cultural factors reinforced the biological ones. Human society celebrated warriors. Their entertainment was filled with stories of heroic battles. Their children played games that simulated combat. By the time a human reached military age, they had already internalized an aggressive mindset. Kethral pulled up the most recent addition to his document. It was a recording from the Syndicate War that had ended only 2 cycles ago. The Merchant Syndicate had assembled the largest fleet in galactic history. They had threatened to blockade Earth and its colonies until the humans agreed to trade concessions. The humans had responded by attacking the Syndicate fleet while it was still assembling. They had destroyed the command structure before the Syndicate leadership even realized a battle had begun. The war had lasted 11 standard days. The Syndicate had surrendered unconditionally. Every military advisor in the Galactic Council had expected a long conflict. Every tactical model had predicted a human defeat. The humans had not followed any of the expected patterns. They had simply attacked with everything they had and kept attacking until there was nothing left to fight. Methkai asked what recommendation he would make to the council. Kethral was silent for a long moment. He had been struggling with this question for months. He finally said that he would recommend against any military conflict with humans. He would advise all member species to pursue diplomatic solutions to any disputes with Earth and its colonies. He would suggest that the humans be given whatever they wanted within reason. She asked if this was not an admission of defeat. He said that it was an acknowledgement of reality. The humans could not be beaten through conventional warfare. They did not fight the way other species fought. They did not think the way other species thought. They had built their entire civilization around the principle of aggressive action. He closed the document and stood from his console. The file would be submitted to the council by the end of the cycle. He doubted they would believe it. He doubted they would take his warnings seriously. Other species always assumed that humans could be dealt with using standard methods. The Krethians had assumed this. The Varaketh had assumed this. The Merchant Syndicate had assumed this. They had all learned the same lesson in the end. Kethral walked to his window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the humans were building more ships. They were training more soldiers. They were preparing for conflicts that had not yet begun. They would be ready when the time came. He thought about the expression on Commander Chun's face in that recording. The battle smile. The joy of combat. He wondered what it must feel like to approach war with enthusiasm rather than fear. He turned back to Methkai and told her that they would continue their research tomorrow. There was still much to document. The humans were expanding rapidly through the galaxy. They would encounter new challenges and new enemies. They would respond to these challenges in the same way they always responded. They would attack. Methkai gathered her data tablets and prepared to leave. She stopped at the door and asked one final question. She wanted to know if he thought the humans were dangerous. Kethral considered the question. He thought about all the recordings he had watched. He thought about all the interviews he had conducted. He thought about the pattern that had emerged from 10,000 years of human military history. He told her that the humans were the most dangerous species he had ever studied. He said that they combined intelligence with aggression in ways that no other species matched. He said that they adapted to new situations faster than any tactical model could predict. But he also told her that humans were not monsters. They valued friendship and alliance. They honored their agreements. They protected those they considered their own. The species that became their friends had nothing to fear from them. The species that became their enemies faced something altogether different. Methkai nodded slowly and left the office. Kethral returned to his window and resumed his contemplation of the stars. The document was finished, but his thoughts continued to circle the same conclusions. The humans would never stop advancing. They would never accept a purely defensive posture. They would always look for the next opportunity to attack. This was not a flaw in their thinking. This was the core of their identity. The galaxy would simply have to adapt.